Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, I'd like to open an account. As a small contractor, I often accept checks written for amounts over $5,000. I had received one of these and was unsure of it. I had heard this particular individual had issued rubber checks in the past, so I decided to cash it at their bank. My thought process was that I would then know immediately if it was valid, and at the same time avoid incurring any fees from my usual bank. I enter the small branch office and wait my turn. I then ask to cash the check and present my ID. The teller asks if I have an account and I answer with a no. She then tells me they charge a $40 fee to cash checks for non-customers. I'm blown away as the check is written on their bank by one of their customers and that fee is huge. I verify this is the case and it is. So I ask to open a savings account. The teller, looking annoyed, starts pulling out paperwork. This is a small branch and apparently here the tellers also open the new accounts. There are only 2 tellers and it's a Friday afternoon, so a line has begun to form. I'm given forms to fill. The teller incredibly gets everything entered as I complete each form. About 10 minutes go by and I'm the proud owner of a new savings account, which I opened with the check in question. Good news, it was good. While counting out the change from the check, I hadn't needed to deposit all of it to open the savings account. The teller welcomes me to the bank and asks if there is anything else. The line behind me has grown and people are now waiting out the door. So I said I'd like to close my account and smile. The teller gives me the dirtiest look I've ever gotten and says I can't close it for 30 days after opening. Undeterred, I ask what the smallest amount I can leave in the savings account is. I'm told $5, so that's what I leave. I sign the withdrawal and am handed my cash. I thank the teller for her help and add that if the fees were more reasonable it would have saved them money. At least 20 people in line as I walked out. I never did close the account and receive a statement by mail every month and have for over 2 years. Next one is titled, Prove that you're just a bad photographer and your new camera is great. If you insist. This was over 15 years ago, when digital SLRs were first becoming somewhat affordable to anyone who wasn't either wealthy or a professional photographer. I was in high school, had been a budding photographer for years already, and working in a small retail photo supply shop. I had a customer who appeared to be in his early 60s come in one Saturday and spend over an hour demoing just about every camera we sold. I honestly looked forward to those customers because it made the time go faster and I generally enjoyed talking shop with people. Eventually, he settled on one that we both thought would suit his needs and I rang him up. A few nights later, he comes back. I've already been given a heads up by the store's owner that this guy has called ahead, and he is upset. When the customer arrives, he immediately accuses me of selling him a camera that's either broken or simply not good enough for what he wants to use it for, taking pictures of his grandkids, who, like most tiny children, are not always sitting perfectly still. It's too slow, it takes the picture after the kid's already done something, every photo is blurry, etc. I take him at his word, I have no reason not to, and examine the camera, changing some settings and snapping a few pictures as I go. I genuinely cannot find anything wrong with it at all. As gently as I can, I try to tell him that it may be a combination of using the wrong settings on the camera for what he's trying to photograph while teaching him the right ones, and maybe a bit of slow reflexes that will develop with practice. Keep in mind that I'm young and terrified of losing my job, so believe me when I say I'm as delicate as I can be with the whole situation. But that was the wrong answer, apparently. His solution, okay hotshot, let's see you make it work. I'm going to wave my arms back and forth over my head, and I want you to take pictures when they're straight up. He insists this will prove that the camera is too slow and can't take a sharp picture. He hands me the camera, and starts doing his best, wave your hands in the air like you just don't care, right in the store. Snap, snap, snap. I hand the camera back and let him review the photos, each one showing the exact moment he wanted me to photograph, perfectly sharp and in focus. He didn't say another word. He huffed, hastily shoved everything back into his camera bag, and stormed off. Sorry, sir. Just doing what you asked me to. Next on is titled, Super Duper Dryer Fire. I rented a basement apartment long ago and, as I was taught growing up, went to empty the lint after I finished doing my laundry in the laundry room I shared with the landlord family upstairs. I had the damnedest time getting the lint trap out. I finally get it out and the entire space is jam-packed with lint. I cleaned it all out and put the trap back. The dryer now took half the time to dry as it had before. So a couple of weeks later, I'm finishing up and emptying the trap and the landlady comes in and is horrified that I took the filter out. This dryer is pretty new and that filter keeps the lint from getting in the motor and destroying the machine, half right. Never take that out again. Okay, after that, I left it to build up, not my electricity when it took forever to dry, not my house in danger of burning down. So I moved out shortly after that. There was a lot of general stupidity from the family upstairs that I didn't put up with after the second month, but only moved a few streets over. Months later, on a cold or rainy fall afternoon, huge surprise. Sirens and fire trucks and flashing lights racing down the street to their house. Their dryer caught fire. I'm sure the landlady blames me though for breaking her dryer instead of the tons of lint she let build up inside and eventually catch fire. But I did as told and never took the lint filter out again. Next one is titled, Won't Get Off the Train. Well, suit yourself. A few years ago, I was working as a conductor for a local train company. As we were about to leave a station, a warning was issued that something was wrong with the train's signal transmitter. As per protocol, the passengers were asked to leave the train and move on to a replacement bus. Now, it was kind of late, around 7 or 8 p.m., and there was maybe about 20 people on board, so we didn't think much of it. About 10 minutes pass and as I'm making my way to the back of the train to check a control panel, I notice a man still sitting in one of the seats in the last cart. I stop, a little confused, and I say, "Excuse me sir, but perhaps you didn't hear before, the train is..." The man, not even looking up from his phone, tells me, "Yeah, I heard you." Me, now actually confused, pause for a bit and then say, "Well, sir, you'll have to leave the train." Him, "I'm sure we'll be moving again soon." Me, "Sir, that doesn't matter, no passengers are allowed to stay on the train." Him, "Look girly, condescending as duck I might add, I'm not getting off this train just so you and your lazy friends up there," he points at the camera in the corner, "can have a break." As he spoke he got up from his seat. This man was probably in his late 40s, easily 6'5" and 240 pounds, towering over my 5'4" 21-year-old skinny butt. I knew he was trying to intimidate me to leave, but since the cameras were on and he'd even pointed them out himself, I found it hard to believe he'd actually do something. So I pressed on. Me, "Sir, I am asking you politely to step off this train." He huffed at me and sat back down, without answering. Me, "Sir? Nah," he just grunted at me. By this point, I'm getting frustrated and tired with this bigot. I muster my sternest look and voice and try one last time, "Sir, the train is not going to move and you are not allowed to be on it." Him, I said, "I'm not ducking moving." "Are you really this dumb? Just shut the duck up and don't tell me anything unless it's that we're at the next station." "Well, all right." I paint on my costumer smile and tell him with a sugary voice, "All right sir, I will," and I hear him mutter under his breath as I leave. I tell my coworker what happened, and he freaks out at first, but as we are not allowed to forcibly remove passengers ourselves, and the nearest security guard is 45 minutes away, I tell him to leave the situation to me. He reluctantly agrees. 20 minutes pass and the signal transmitter error is solved. We get permission to move and are told to go back to our starting station to wait for our next scheduled trip. This of course meaning we're turning around and not continuing our planned route. It doesn't take long from when we leave the station that there's a knock on my door. I know it's the man, but as he can't see into my cabin, I don't answer the door. A few more knocks and then he leaves. The trip back to our starting station takes about 45 minutes, and I call ahead to have a security guard waiting there for us. As we approach the station, I find the man pacing in the hallways, and I can tell he is absolutely furious. I'm trying so hard not to laugh out loud at his fat, tomato-red face. Me, "Sir, we tear nearing the next station." Him, trembling over his word in anger, "This is not my ducking station." I look him dead in the eye with a fake, very overly done, confused face as the train pulls up to the platform and I can see the guard through the window. Well, no sir, you told me not to talk to you unless it was to tell you when we were at the next station. This is the next station. We are here. So I'm telling you. The man was visibly shaking at this point. He was spitting out words that I couldn't apprehend. When the security guard tapped him on the shoulder and asked him to step off, he exploded in a fit of rage, which ultimately ended with the police escorting him off the premises. I reckon it took him a very hefty amount of unnecessary cash and time to get to his destination after that, while I was left with a very amusing story to tell my coworkers, until I quit like 2 weeks later. Next one is titled, STDs are cheaper than PhDs. I work for a company that among other things does security testing and verification of hardware that has strict security requirements, think payment terminals or chips in credit cards or set-top boxes. Given this is a niche market and requires a lot of expertise, expensive equipment and knowledge, our rates are high. The day rate for me could buy you an entire weekend with a high-class escort, as the client in this story once told me. But we have a stellar reputation in the industry to go above and beyond for clients and are still cheaper than your product shipping late or never. Most customers understand this. Large and established clients know the costs and don't ever mention it me. I have to check with the account manager to see how much he sold me for this time around. But we also serve smaller clients, startups or smaller companies that move into manufacturing, designing, custom components or products that require our services as well. The company in question was a small company in Korea that made most of their money with a few legacy components used in alarm systems among others. They had a monopoly on these components because larger manufacturers had since moved on because for them the economics did not make sense anymore. This smaller company had made it work for a few years longer, but already saw the end coming and started working on a new version of the component. Problem was that most of their capable staff had since left, and the product they had been designing for the past year was in itself an achievement for how broken and insecure it was. But the owner of the company, who was the grand architect of this masterpiece, did not see it that way. This product was great, and would pass all certifications and allow his company to rake in cash for another 20 years. I didn't know any of this going in. The account manager sold me on a run-of-the-mill job. Upon first day of review of the product, I found so many simple issues that I stopped the review and sat down with the client and the account manager to talk about changing the assignment to better serve their needs and make them actually pass certification on the first try. This often happens with smaller clients that don't always know the process to certification and find themselves lost in the process and the strict requirements. We generally take a more practical approach to help them out. As their end goal is certification, it makes sense to focus on solving the issues instead of spending 2 weeks on a report stating they have issues. While at first he was open to it, and we changed 2 weeks of testing and reporting to me, helping them getting things sorted. That way they might be able to hit their deadline with a more secure, albeit lower rated component. But he quickly invited himself into every conversation I had with an engineer, as he was the grand architect, and belittled me continuously, mostly ending with sexist remarks. I've learned to ignore the occasion comment by men in my field by now, sometimes being witty and fast enough to sling a hurtful comment back to them. But the grand architect of sexism actually started getting under my skin by how often he did in just one 20-minute conversation. Surely continuously being sexist must even wear him out, right? Halfway during the week he suddenly brought in a potential new customer, while I was working. Not having mentioned it to me. I think because the company I work for is well known in the industry, he tried to put me on the spot with the customer to tell him how secure the product is, thinking the situation would make me just say the product was great to not create an incident. I said to come back later because I am doing very time-sensitive testing, and they luckily never came back. If he had pushed it, I would have probably said something to the effect of, secure? Not at all, that's why I am here. I cannot lie about findings. It's my reputation and consequences be damned. At the end of the week we had an update meeting, and Mr. Sexist Only now told me that he changed his mind. He wanted nothing changed to product anymore, me gone, and a report on his desk by next week he can share with the certification body. He was able to get an earlier slot for review and was going to use it. The product was fine and he was done with me. After a short argument with me staying professional and trying to tell him he was only going to pass at a barely medium level with the fixes we put in over the last week, he told me that would be fine enough and to shut my mouth. I was a witch who talked too much and knew nothing of this field he was already in for 40 years, during the conversation saying that the escort he slept with 2 weekends ago was cheaper than my day rate and she actually satisfied him. I had heard this one before, so without thinking told him something to the effect of STDs are cheaper than PhDs. He lost it and told me I was to write the required report for certification on the current product and nothing else. He did not want to see me at the office anymore. I said sure, I will send you an official request to provide me the documents, be sure to upload them as soon as you can so I can get on with it and you'll get the report in the mail before end of day Friday next week. Unbeknownst to him, the fixes I put in over the week only existed in files on the local notebooks of the engineers. Most companies have proper version tracking, syncing software and workplace rules in place to handle this. But this company didn't, and only one engineer had added the changes to the main design documents during the week. So the official documents that got sent to my company that evening were the files from before I had added fixes with the engineers, with only 2 minor fixes that made it in but were insignificant in the slew of issues in this product. Normally I would double check with the client and inform them about missing documents and the like. But he had clearly said in the email that these were the correct files. Sure, if you say so. Enter my malicious compliance. I wrote the report based on the current documentation, but every item on the checklist would color red with a big fat fail in the results column. He get his report on Friday and within the hour was on the line with my account manager, who I had told everything. He had his own issues with clients, and he was on board with me, because he knew me for years and I had a stellar record with dozens of his other clients, and he basically told him that his attitude caused review problems, and he himself had insisted these were the correct files he wanted reviewed. In the weeks after there were some threats about lawsuit, but with us backing out on helping them further, given non-payment and the threat of lawsuits, his company never put out the product and 2 months later was bought for cheap by one of our other clients in part of a talent acquisition. The employees were fine engineers, they just did not have the particular skill set they needed for this component. The client who bought them paid our outstanding bills without any issue. After making use of our connections there, got them to sell us the rights and design documents for this particular component in exchange for a week of training. It had no value to them, and given the costs of our training it was bargain as far as they were concerned. As broken as the product was, it was too good to pass up for training purposes because of the myriad of basic mistakes in it. I had already written half the training material in the report for it anyway. I still give training from time to time with it detailing all the wrong ways of doing things. Last one is titled, "Can't Leave Till the Plate is Clean." Yes sir. This happened a long time ago, when I, 30s female, was just a wee one. I'll start off by saying my dad isn't a great cook. He has a unique talent when it comes to cooking. He can somehow burn something on the outside, and leave it frozen on the inside. Needless to say, he wasn't often the one making meals for me and my brother. I should also note that I'm not a picky eater. I love food, but I do have an extremely sensitive sense of smell and taste. I immediately know when something tastes off. I have an especially hard time with reheated chicken, and especially when heated in the microwave. To me, pre-cooked microwave chicken tastes like what a wet dog smells like. On to the story. One night, when I was 8 or 9, my mum had a board meeting and tasked my dad with making us dinner. When he realized there weren't leftovers from the night before, he pulled out a box of frozen chicken cordon bleu from Costco. The oven takes too long, so he nuked them in the microwave. They were soggy and the meat inside was a little grey. I took one bite and decided that's a nope for me. I tried to negotiate an alternative, but he wasn't having it. My dad is a stubborn person. Really stubborn, but the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He gives me an ultimatum. You will not leave this table until you eat every single bite. No alternatives, that's the deal. Cue malicious compliance. I ask if I'm allowed to at least use the bathroom. He says yes, so I head downstairs to the kids' bathroom, and what do you know, my sleeping bag is sitting right next to the bathroom door. I do my thing and head back upstairs. My dad is reading in the living room at this point and doesn't see me sneak back to the table with my sleeping bag. I sit back down in my spot and put the bag under the table. My dad periodically checks in on my progress, of which I make none. This goes on until he's ready for bed. He reminds me I can't leave the table till I've cleaned my plate. I say, "Yes, sir." He heads upstairs, and I set up camp under the table. When my mum got home, she asked what I was doing and I filled her in. She thought it was hysterical, got me my jammies and went to bed. She must not have told my dad, because when he came down in the morning and saw my untouched plate, he was visibly annoyed. That's when I poke my head out to say, "Morning, Dad. I haven't left the table." The look on his face was priceless. Of course the food can't be eaten now, so he tosses it in the trash and tells me to go get ready for school. When I head back upstairs, I see my dad has made the one thing he can cook really well, French toast. He hands me my plate with a smile and says, "I've never been more proud." Thanks for listening.